That Was Yesterday podcast is brought to you by Define Mind and Body Wellness, my wellness center here in Glastonbury, Connecticut, where we specialize in holistic services to help shortcut the process so that you can see results fast, but learn to do it in a habitual way. So many of the topics we talk about are part of the program that our clients receive, except they get much more in-depth detail. Also, my workbook of the 10-week program to lose and never look back, which is only available to our patients at Define. If you are interested in holistic body fat spot reduction, or our pod to increase your metabolism, or our cold plunge, or our sauna, which is the best sauna in the world, that I promise you. I know that sounds biased, but you'll see for yourself. Please go to definewellnesscenter.com. You will be prompted to put your information in and make sure to mention podcast when you do, as you will be eligible for a bigger discount on our introductory services because you are a listener. Appreciate you. Have a great day and enjoy today's podcast. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the That Was Yesterday podcast. We took a bit of a hiatus here, but I am very excited for our next second season coming up. And today's episode is a Q&A I did the other night talking about hypnosis. Now, this is something that I've been finding a ton of success with my patients over the last few years, mainly people who have tried everything, who have the intention to hit their goal, who truly want to hit their goal, yet who have struggled because nothing to do with them being incapable or anything else, but because of their subconscious programming up to that point, it's kept them in that self-sabotage loop. And so hypnosis is a tool that I use with patients who have that struggle to help unlock the capability within, because it's already there. Like, I can assure you right now, if you're listening to this, no matter where you're at on your journey, the thing that you want to do or the goal you have is 100% without a shadow of the doubt attainable for you, not just to achieve, but to maintain. There's no issue with you getting there. Where the issue might be is something in your subconscious programming that is limiting you, that is shaming you, that is unresolved and needs to be healed so that you can maintain and do what it is that you want to do. And so one of the best tools I've known to use is hypnosis. And so in this episode, I give basically a Q&A. It's a live Q&A, but really the beginning part is me explaining, kind of what hypnosis is. It's a very taboo subject, and some people have had good experiences with hypnosis. Other people have a perception of hypnosis from Hollywood or, seeing a hypnosis event on a cruise ship or a college thing that's more of an entertainment comedy, So there's a wide range of perceptions of what hypnosis is, but I can assure you this is an extremely powerful mechanism for lasting transformation. And so enjoy this episode. Again, welcome back. Excited to be doing this again, and I will see you on the other side. So, what is hypnosis? Hypnosis is bypassing a critical factor of the conscious mind. And really, that's just a fancy way of saying hypnosis is getting you to an extremely relaxed state so that your conscious mind can sort of like step aside. You see, the conscious mind is constantly filtering. It's constantly justifying. It's constantly worrying. It's bringing up things from our past. It's trying to protect us in the very moment. However, it can get in the way of creating lasting change. And oftentimes the mind can sort of become its own mechanism against us. I talked earlier briefly about parts, right? There's parts that live within us. And if those parts are not resolved, or if you're not having a good idea of what sort of energies are sort of dominant within you, then the conscious mind is sort of going to take sort of a life of its own. And so through hypnosis, we're getting you to an extremely relaxed spot so that your conscious mind is just sort of like stepped aside so that we can work with the subconscious mind. You see, all negative patterns, all traumas, both micro and macro, and trauma is a word that it sounds like a scary word, and fortunately, if you've had experienced trauma, it likely is. However, we all have traumas to some degree. So there's macro traumas. These are like big events that could be something that's happened to you or something that's happened to somebody who you love. And then there's micro traumas. So micro trauma could be, for instance, I've worked with a lot of people who've experienced micro traumas that one little thing that was done once set in stage a way of thinking and therefore a course of actions that literally created this whole different manifestation of that individual's life. And several, I mean, this is very common, but her entire life, the one I'm thinking, so I'll give you a quick example. What is a micro trauma? Well, in her case, her gym teacher, it was like so many gym teachers, especially in like, early 2000s, 90s, and way before, basically told her she wasn't an athlete. That was it, right? Not that big of a deal, one might think. Well, if this woman's for example, this woman's case, she had struggled with insecurity already. She was a bigger girl. And so when their gym teacher told her that, it sort of confirmed all of her insecurities. And so what that did was set in motion all of these actions and inactions that brought her closer to that identity of being quote unquote fat, of being, because that was what people were calling her, right? She already had that going on, and then it was just reinforced by an adult who was in a leadership position who she looked to as a professional. And those words mean a lot to us, especially when you're at a very developmental age like she was. And so her entire adult life, basically, up until we started working together, she thought of herself as fat. Now, you can only imagine how that makes one feel, how it makes her feel about herself, her confidence, about her abilities, about who she is as a person and what she could accomplish. And so that wasn't so obvious for her. And so one of the things we do in hypnosis is what's called age regression, where we go back to a very, you know, where this micro or macro trauma took place and sort of uncover what was going on and who was involved and so on and so forth. So, through hypnosis, we're getting you extremely relaxed so that we can work with the subconscious. We can identify whatever internal or external traumas exist within you and rewire anything that is programmed incorrectly, i.e., I'm fat, I'm lazy. Every time I get started and see success, I fall off, or I'm not good enough. I mean, there's no shortage of these things. Now there are a lot of patterns that I work with, but there are these archetypes, I should say, patterns, archetypes. I use that word interchangeably at times, but basically we all have our own degree of hurt, and they generally will fall within something that's pretty consistent that others have had before, although our own individual paths are different. So when we're rewiring the subconscious, we're resetting the nervous system. Oftentimes, the nervous system is automatically responding to what it knows to respond to. So, for example, I work with a lot of people with anxiety, and I think of anxiety as like the umbrella of which everything else falls under. In other words, like if you are struggling with weight, if you're struggling with sadness, if you're not happy with where you are at professionally, and then you're also anxious, well, that anxiety is going to really be the thing of which we probably want to focus on first, because none of that other stuff is going to get better until we heal that anxiety. And unfortunately, these days, the way we handle anxiety is calling you an anxious person. You're not an anxious person. I don't care what degree of anxiety you have. You are not an anxious person. You are somebody with anxiety, which, by the way, all humans have anxiety. Anxiety isn't something that it's not a disease. Anxiety is a signal. It's a signal that our ancestors used to keep us alive. Getting that nervous feeling, like we go way back when, before civilization, and we that was a chaotic world of which our ancestors evolved from. Now, the animal part of our brain that we have is the same that they had. And so anxiety and fear came into play for the survival of humans. Because if you they would uncivilized environment, there was a lot of predators, there was tribes that were constantly at war. There's a lot of unknown and uncertainty. We don't have the bird's eye view we have now of what everything is around us, right? And so if you're walking, say a mother and her kids through the woods, and all of a sudden forest, you hear sort of crinkling of wood or trees or branches, all of a sudden the anxiety would kick in. Alert, 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 something is off. So that might cause that woman to go seek help or support or shelter, right? That's what anxiety, that type of thing is what anxiety is for. Now, I mentioned we have the same animal brain we had then that we have now, so we haven't evolved. The problem is, not only has that animal part of our brain not evolved, we live in a world that exploits our anxieties, our fears, and our insecurities to the utmost degree. I mean, consumerism took a really started in a significant way back like World War One, World War Two, right? But now you magnify that by, gosh, untold amounts is what we experience with social media and the interconnectedness of all the world and communication and news. So all of it really feeds at our insecurities and drives our anxiety more so than it ever was. And so anxiety really is an alert to tell you, hey, something might be wrong, but it's not a disease. It's not who you are, right? And that's a very important thing to separate. And I've worked with a lot, most of my hypnosis clients, in fact, have done therapy. Some of them had some positive experience, and I am not here to talk down upon therapists at all. I'm sharing my experience because obviously not all therapists are this way. However, a lot of the people who have gotten the opportunity to work with have been told many times that, hey, you're an anxious person, or you're suffering from broken heart disease, or they're getting labeled. And to the degree that someone else labels us, like that gym teacher I mentioned, or a therapist, somebody in a position of which we look up to, that only makes our issues that much worse because it sort of reinforces the hurt that we already have inside. And so I I don't believe in labels. And part of what we do is break free of labels. You're not an anxious person. You're not a fat person. You might be overweight, but that doesn't mean you're a fat person. And if you keep identifying as an anxious person, if you keep identifying as a quote unquote fat person, what do you think is going to happen thereafter? And these are real concerns, And so just really quickly on the anxiety thing, it just seems like the general consensus out there by by therapists, by psychiatrists is go on an SSRI. Oh, you're having trouble? Let's ramp it up. For most people, this isn't everybody. And by the way, I don't have a problem with SSRIs by any degree. Sometimes it is needed, but it is not a solution. It is a bridge. It should be a bridge. But so often people don't get that opportunity for it to be a bridge. They're sort of just left here, take it, numb yourself, distract yourself. That doesn't heal anything. And what happens is what we witnessed when the world dealt with COVID, and especially as a coach, you had people who were at like a scale of 1 to 10 of like a lot going on. They were at a 5, but when COVID hit, that brought them to a 7, right? Those who were at a 7, that brought them to a 9. Those who were at a 9, they got brought up to a 10, meaning that they might have been able to get by, but something of significant magnitude hit. And that's, I mean, hopefully we don't experience something like COVID again, but it doesn't matter. We all experience things in our life that we didn't expect to happen, that we don't want to happen, right? And if you're at a place where you have unresolved trauma within, especially anxiety and a lot of fear, soon as that thing happens, it's going to send you down a downward spiral that oftentimes is very hard to get yourself out of, especially if you're identifying as that's who you are. And what's the solution there? Just more SSRIs, drugs, alcohol? Like, no, that's not the solution, right? The solution is healing. And so through hypnosis, we're getting you to a relaxed place. So and that's another, by the way, another issue I often find with therapists in therapy is that when somebody is in the chair, so to speak, they're conscious. And so they're consciously filtering whether they're doing it on purpose or not, what to say, what to not to say, and sometimes telling stories, sometimes that stories that they're trying to tell, sometimes stories that it's just what they believe because their conscious mind is trying to protect them. So when we're doing hypnosis, when you're hypnotized, we're bypassing all of that. We're getting to the subconscious where you hold your truths. By the way, you don't just hold traumas in your subconscious. You hold your capabilities. That's a very important thing. As a hypnotist, I'm not like making you a better person or giving you talent or capability. I'm just helping you unlock what's already there. And so that's all hypnosis is. And people ask like, can I be hypnotized? Like, I don't know if I can be hypnotized. My mind's going all the time. See, the problem here is that we oftentimes confuse hypnosis with meditation, and those two are very different. You see, I studied Vedic meditation for a period of time. One of the biggest takeaways I took from that was our perception of meditation is different from what it should actually be. In other words, you think of meditation, and most people, especially type A crazy people like myself, they might say something like, I tried to meditate, but every time I meditate, my mind goes crazy. I can't quiet my mind. I can't shut my mind off, right? But meditation, that's not the goal of meditation, really. You see, when we think of meditation, we think of what monks experience. Monks, monks who live away from the chaos of the world, who are not connected through technology, who oftentimes are connected to nature, right? That right there, it's a different way of life. They don't have the stresses that we have every day. But what we think of meditation, we think, well, I should be able to sit upright and comfortable and just let my mind be completely at peace. And that ain't how it works. Monks don't have our stress. We are not monks. And if you want to be a monk, I'm not, hey, all the more power to you. But if you're going to live in this crazy world we live in, you're not going to, if your goal is to meditate like a monk, good luck. Not that it can't be done, but that might create a lot more stress than it does anything else. So the way to think about it is householder meditation. Household meditation is not to quiet your mind, not to shut your mind off. By the way, if you shut your mind off, that might mean you're dead or numb, right? We don't want either of those. We just want to just slow it down. And so when you meditate, the practice of meditation should just be slowing your breath, closing your eyes, observing your thoughts, but not connecting your thoughts, and not letting any one thought attach itself to you. Just letting it pass by like a cloud in the sky, right? But that's hard to do. And so the difference between hypnosis and meditation is that in this situation, I'd be facilitating hypnosis to you. So I am guiding you towards relaxation. It's a lot different from trying to create that on your own. And so they are two different things. Oftentimes in meditation, you're struggling just to be able to sit there comfortably and quiet the mind, so to speak. But hypnosis, if you have a good hypnotist, it doesn't matter how type A you are, how busy your mind is. Look, anybody can be hypnotized as long as your IQ is at a 60 or higher. Anybody can be hypnotized. However, I like to be very clear when I'm talking to people about hypnosis. While you absolutely can be hypnotized, if you have in your head a fear or an anxiety about being hypnotized, or if you're not ready for change, don't waste my time. Don't waste your time or money. I'm not here to try to prove that I can hypnotize you, right? Because we have to resolve the fear and anxiety first for hypnosis to work, or otherwise, the protector inside of you is going to put up a wall. But that wall isn't a wall that's unbreakable by any stretch. As long as you're open to that wall coming down, you're good. If you want to be hypnotized, you can be hypnotized. So much of this is intention. You think about it, anything in life, if you're like, whether there's a marriage, a job, anything of meaning, you go into it, be like, this marriage is going to suck. We're probably going to get divorced. What do you think's going to happen? Do you think it's going to be happily ever after if you go into a marriage like that? If you sign on for a job and you're like, I hate this company, I hate this boss, this is going to be miserable. Do you think you're going to enjoy the job? Sure, there could be surprises, but more times than not, you're setting up that expectation for yourself and you're going to manifest it. And so if you go into hypnosis saying it's not going to work for me, well, you're probably right. But that's not because you can't be hypnotized. You can be hypnotized. And so let's talk about some of the fears and anxieties that oftentimes people have. Most of us anyway have witnessed a stage hypnotist on a cruise boat, college, some other type of event. Generally, those are entertainment comedy shows, right? They bring up people, they go up, they do funny stuff and embarrassing stuff. Here's the interesting thing. As a hypnotist, I know what's going on behind the scenes. So, as the hypnotist is on stage, what he or she is doing is starting off with what are called convincers. He is giving very low level hypnosis to the audience to see who's following. And the people who are following, of those people, he's looking to see who are the people who are actually like doing exactly what I'm asking. Those are the people he pulls on stage. When he pulls those people on stage, he's continuing to filter out who's really following and who's just goofing off. And that's why he'll kick people off of stage, because he's looking for people who are not following exactly what he's asking them to do and taking it seriously. But the people who are left on stage are those who want the smoke. They want the attention. They're following exactly what was asked of them. I mean, they're not going up on stage at a comedy show thinking, oh, this guy's going to solve my weight loss issues. That's not the purpose. They're there for comedy. They know it's entertainment. They probably, in some part of them, wants the attention. And that's why they're doing the goofy stuff, because they're letting it happen. In hypnosis, while you're very relaxed, you're still conscious. You're not going to do anything you don't want to do. Hollywood makes it look like you will go kill somebody. And then the person goes off and does that, right? That's Hollywood, but that's not real life. You're not going to do anything in hypnosis that you wouldn't want to do. You're not going to say anything in hypnosis that's not true to you. So when you see those comedy hypnosis events, recognize that that is not at all what we're here to do. And that's not at all what will happen unless you let it happen. And so, along the lines, another fear that people have with hypnosis is, what happens if I can't get out of trance? Now, sometimes people really love the feeling of being in trance, so they're a little harder to get out. But at the end of the day, that's not an issue. Because again, if you have the right hypnotist, they can, first of all, nobody's stuck in hypnosis, by the way. Eventually, they would just wake up out of it. But there are certain things and tactics and tricks we use as hypnotists to be able to guide people to get into hypnosis and to come out of hypnosis. It's not like, it's not just willy-nilly thing. There's a lot that goes on to get somebody in and out of trance. So that's not an issue that you'd have to worry there. So the other part of this, though, is, are you ready for the change? There's a concept called existential kink. Yeah, I know it sounds kind of wild, right? But really, what that is there's a part of, in some situations, there's a part of people who, no matter how bad their situation is, and let's use weight because this is a very common one I deal with, that person, although they don't like looking in a mirror and being dissatisfied, they don't like shopping for bigger clothes, they don't like the way they feel, they don't like the way people look at them, they don't like the way their connection is with their partner intimately. All of that might be true, yet they still don't want to change the identity from being overweight, or some people who refer to themselves as fat. They're not ready to change that because that is actually giving them a value. If you are someone who has been overweight your entire life, and by the way, I'm just going to take this moment to say, nobody is ever born to be obese. Let's make that very, very clear. Some people are born with obesity in the terms of a slower metabolism, but not obesity. Like, nobody's born obese. And unfortunately, big networks like CNN last year went on. They interviewed this quote unquote doctor expert, who, by the way, is on payroll for pharmaceutical companies. Like, it's facts that you can find. It's not, no one's hiding it. It's there. Um, she had said on CNN that obesity is a brain disease. Yeah, it's not a brain disease by any stretch. And if her or anybody else is going to go on TV and say something like that, they should also say, hey, by the way, I get consulting fees from pharmaceuticals, because her end game in that conversation was talking about weight loss medication. And I'm not here to say weight loss medication is good or bad. Again, just like SSRIs, there is a place for it, but you have to understand the full picture. And when it comes to weight loss drugs, what's not talked about is, first of all, what it's doing to your metabolism, slowing it down. And secondly, if you're losing weight in a way that is predicated on just the pill or an injection, when you remove that pill or injection, what happens? If you didn't create any habit changes, and more importantly, if you didn't heal the thing inside of you that you identify as someone who is overweight, then you're going to end up right back where you were, but worse. And of course, there's a lot of other side effects. And again, sometimes these types of things are needed for short term, but there should be a full context around it. It shouldn't just be like, yeah, take this, lose weight, and you're going to keep it off. That's just not how it works. And so when what I was talking about before with like identifying in that situation with a woman who would identify as being overweight, as identifying as being fat, no matter how many things in her life were not good because of her health and her weight, she felt comfortable being fat or overweight because that is all she ever knew. That is existential kink, and that's a real thing. That is a real thing. And this same thing, by the way, happens with people who grew up in a impoverished environment, who never were kind of taught differently, or a situation where they grew up really limiting belief systems around them about what they could do, about what the world was, and all these things. They manifest to become your identity. As soon as success kicks in, they sabotage it because they don't, that's not comfortable for them, right? And so it's really fascinating. That's why, again, and especially seeing all the results I've been able to experience with my patients through hypnosis, it's like, wow, like this stuff is so powerful because there's so many things, oftentimes, I would argue, all the patterns that we have, especially self sabotage, that's not going to go away when you lose weight or you make money. So, unless you're able to get to the root cause of those things, you're going to end up, this is why so many people yo yo, right? And so we have to heal it. We have to heal it. And so, can you be hypnotized? A part of that question is, are you ready for change? And that's something that seems like an obvious answer, not always so obvious. So I mentioned this a little bit. What happens when you're under trance? Do you lose full control? You don't. You're just completely relaxed. You're not going to do or say anything you don't want to do. And so, who is hypnosis for? Hypnosis is for people who either know that they have had some unresolved traumas that are affecting them, know that they have certain patterns that they want to get out of, or just know that no matter what they try, nothing seems to work. And that's just self sabotage at play. And self sabotage is a big part of what I do. And I know self sabotage really, really well because I have been on this journey myself for a number of years. I grew up bullied. I grew up with a very low self esteem. I grew up thinking I was stupid and retarded because that's what I was told so often and reinforced in the school system, special reading classes, doing really bad on standardized tests, whether it was elementary school or whether it was SATs, of which I got a tutor for, studied really hard for, still couldn't break 1,000. This was way back when they had a different structure, right? But those things reinforce your insecurities, right? And then bad teachers, you name it. And so I found self-development at an early age, and that was helpful. It helped me create a false sense of confidence, but it really wasn't until my late 20s, early 30s where like I dove deeper and started to really learn about subconscious programming and started to really learn the voice dialogue concept really just spoke to me and it made everything very clear of like, whoa, here's what's going on. And so while I was able to have a false sense of confidence for a while, even when things were going well, I was never satisfied. And when things went wrong, I was really hard on myself. And so I know firsthand, like for me, self-sabotage, what it looks like. And that's what I help identify in other my clients. Because again, that's the issue. Like how many times, I don't know if this has happened to you, but so many of my patients who would be like, they'd go to their doctor and they would be like, doctor would say something like, you need to lose weight. And they're looking at him like, no shit. Like, obviously, right? Like, what kind of advice is that? Obviously, like, if you have a weight problem, you know it. That's not good advice. If it was that easy, you would have lost the weight. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. And especially now we live in a world where look, I work with a lot of boomers, baby boomers, who, you know, there was such little information and the quality of food was so different. The way of life was so different. They grew up being way more active, right? Not necessarily like fitness active, but just activity was a part of, there was less convenience, right? We had to do things more. Or you had to do things more. The world's completely different now. It's all convenience. You don't have to do as much, right? You can just order, right? You don't have to go too far to find anything you want. And so now, for a lot of boomers, they're in this world where they never really learned what health looks like. They just had those times were healthier if you look at it from the how active people were and how we ate and what our food quality was then versus now. The amount of fast food that was available then versus now, it's a dramatic difference. Then you have people like myself, my generations, who our education of nutrition was the food pyramid. Remember the food pyramid? Where the base part of the food pyramid was 6 to 11 servings of white bread, cereal, and rice per day, pasta. Hmm. You show me one healthy adult individual who is not a professional athlete who has that amount of carbohydrates per day. I have yet to meet one. And so that's what we were told. And there's reasons why we were told that. It was commodity driven without a question. I mean, we knew then I mean, this isn't new research to know that processed carbohydrates are not healthy for you if you're eating them in abundance. And yet that was the extent of our education. So we have these other factors that it's these societal factors. Another one for so many women, societal factor is weight. In this world, especially women, there's so much pressure on being a certain weight. But here's the truth. Nobody knows what your weight should be. I don't care what your doctor says. Oh, you should be 30 pounds. Look, there's so much that goes into weight. There are standards of weight, but to say like you should be this weight, like I understand so many of us are like, well, hey, no, I've gained a lot of weight and I felt good around 140. I get that. But if that's been, let's just say you felt good at 140 10 years ago and you're a woman who's gone through menopause, your body has completely changed. Now, that's not to say that you're going to be destined to be the weight you are and how you feel for the rest of your life. No, not at all. Not at all. We specialize every single day in transforming women in and around menopause through our spot reduction and our pods here at Define, changing habits, hypnosis. But we don't promise a weight goal because there's so much that goes into it. Water retention, hormone fluctuation, sleep, stress, all of this stuff causes your body to hold weight, fluid imbalance, big thing that happens to a lot of women in menopause. Well, that can manipulate your weight to a way where like your actions may or may not reflect progress if you're only focusing on the scale. And the issue is that we place our value on the number on the scale. And ultimately, I've helped a lot of people lose a lot of weight. I'll tell you, first and foremost, the same pattern is with everybody. It's never enough. Oh, I'm down 20 pounds. This is great. And then you stop going down and you're pissed, right? You're down 50 pounds. It's great. And then you stop going down and you're pissed because we're focusing, we're putting value on something that really shouldn't be anything of value. We should measure health by, yes, of course, how we feel, but more than that, obviously, like, yeah, I just feel healthy, but I'm really, my physical body's unhealthy. Like, that's another problem that our society has. We can't have honest conversations. Look, if your body fat is 50%, that's a real problem. It's not okay. And that's not me judging. It's just reality that if that is your body fat percent and that doesn't change, the rest of your life is not going to be good. It's just not. And I'm not saying you can't be happy like that. I'm saying that that's going to lead to heart disease. That's going to lead to diabetes, high blood pressure. And so, what's the solution? Take this medication, take that insulin, take this, take that. Is that how you want to live the rest of your life? And what happens when you get a little bit older and your body really starts to shut down and your joints break down because of all the extra body weight? It's not good. So, we have to be able to have that conversation. And so, hypnosis for people who struggle with weight for sure, but it's never about the exact weight, and it isn't easy, right? That's how we started this whole discussion. Most of our population would not be obese if it was easy. It's not easy. And it's not because we don't know we need to exercise. And it's not because we don't know we need to eat better. We know these things. Why are they not happening? Self-sabotage. And what self-sabotage does is it rationalizes why you can't, shouldn't, won't, why now is not a good time. And the thing is self-sabotage is rooted in truth, but it projects your insecurities. And that's a real problem when you're trying to go from where you are right now to lasting change. I work a lot with hypnosis for anxiety, bowel movements, performance, you name it. Really, any pattern that is uncomfortable and causing you issues can be resolved. You were not meant to be what you might label yourself as or what somebody else has labeled yourself as. You're just not. Absolutely not. And that's nothing on you, by the way, because a lot of the issues that we all struggle with, they're not necessarily conscious decisions we make. Now, someone ignorantly could argue, well, you're putting a muffin in your mouth and oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. But that person didn't form that belief system about themselves as an adult. That started way earlier. And they weren't born like that either, by the way. We already talked about that. Don't get me started. And by the way, why that drives me so crazy is because that's the ultimate label to place upon somebody, ultimate restriction. Oh, well, your brain is such where you're obese. What? No, absolutely not. It's just not true. I've helped way too many people to see that. And I also understand weight loss and how this stuff works. It's not true. So the person who's putting a muffin in their mouth, yeah, they should stop doing that if they're overweight, right? But it isn't as easy as that. If that person has had a lot of trauma as a child, or I work with a lot of people who had gone through really tough times and had nobody around them to support them and they were alone. But what they had was food, and food gave them comfort. And if we don't rewire that relationship with food, it will forever be an issue. So, I want to take a moment to stop 'cause I've been talking a lot. I didn't realize that we're already 37 minutes in. And I would like to answer any questions that popped up so far and then go over the different programs that we have available. If I can find my Zoom here. Any questions so far that I could answer? You guys still with me? All right. So, I will go ahead and we'll show you guys the different programs that we have available. So, the purpose of these programs, I look at it three ways. It's to reset, release, release the need for control. Is another thing I work a lot with is that need, the need to control things in life, which creates a lot of anxiety, creates a lot of sadness. Look, there are certain things we can control. There's a lot we can't control. But if we have a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety in us, we're going to feel like we need to have more control over things, even if we don't consciously think that. But our actions would say that we do. Things that we can't control cause issues, or we stay away from. So releasing extra weight, releasing the sort of tyranny that your own self holds within your, like the inner tyrant. I talk a lot about the parts of you that sort of you feel obligated to be a certain way. There's so much going on, but we're releasing that. And then of course rewiring your identity, rewiring your subconscious programming so that you can overcome self-sabotage and accelerate the progress that you want to see. And so these are some of the areas we kind of talked about: confidence, performance and academics, athletic, professional, empowerment. So many women have it harder than men. There's no question. Metabolically, they have it harder. Women deal with menopause. Men don't deal with that degree of change as we age. And women have a lot more harsh standards that are put upon them by society than men do. And men just lose weight easier, and that's because of metabolic, but nonetheless. A lot of most of my patients, my clients are women. Worked with a lot of men as well, but that's definitely a passion of mine. Emotional eating, self-sabotage, resetting your nervous system, anxiety relief, and breaking free of yo-yoing. So basically, the types of programs that we have are group and immersion, which is one-on-one. So with the way group is, we're doing one group hypnosis induction thematically a month. So there'll be a theming for that hypnosis induction. Now that will be recorded, and that will be something that part of our program is that you'll be listening to on your own. But then every week we're going to have an integrated sort of coaching, a group coaching session where we're working on things like healing the inner child, things like anxiety, things like self-sabotage and patterns. One on one, that can be whatever it is that you need it to be, whatever you're struggling with. And oftentimes, what you think you're struggling with isn't the issue. There's something underneath that. But again, very hard to figure that out when you have a million other things going on in your life. With the group coaching, there's basically a group chat and online community that you'd be a part of. The integration coaching is very important. It's one thing to do in an hypnosis induction. It's another thing to do a few sessions, but if you're not getting the way to integrate it into your life and how it actually works for you and what needs to be worked for you and in you and through you, then it's not going to last. So, big part of what I believe in is integration. Um, Weekly Q&As and hot seats. So that's individuals not being like on a hot seat per se, or we're putting a ton of pressure on you. It's more like, hey, like let's take you through a process specific to what you might be struggling with, and everybody else can learn by watching. That person on the hot seat is going to benefit because they're the one going through it, right? um, the one-on-one immersion is going to be personalized subconscious wiring, mind map, personalized mind map creation. Now, mind mapping would be something we would do in a group environment with the group coaching, but well, let me just pause. Mind mapping is essentially helping you understand all that is going on internally in your head and the parts of you who are dominant, the parts of you who are disowned. And if you're not able to uncover what those things are, they're going to continue to feed into self sabotage. There's just no way around it. I don't care how much weight you lose and what program you do to lose the weight. If you're not understanding what that inner dialogue is and able to separate yourself from that, you're going to be stuck in the same patterns. So it's very important. Personalized weekly check-ins, unlimited access. Before we got on this, I was just chatting with one of my private patients. I tell all my private people, like, anytime you are struggling, you message me right away, because I'm not like on call, right? I'm not like gonna drop everything I can do and hear it right then and there, but I will as soon as I can. And the big thing is that oftentimes that one little having somebody in your corner who's completely objective, non-judgmental, who's there to help you, who knows the next step for you, can be the make or break thing from, in this woman's situation, from her expressing it to me versus going into the pantry when everybody else is asleep. It's a big thing. And sometimes people who have especially had a lot of trauma, it's not a light switch that you just, oh, I did a hypnosis session once and I'm good, right? So I've had that for people for sure, but that's not for everybody. Sometimes there's a lot of unfucking, so to speak. Sorry for putting it so bluntly, but that's what happens. We got to unfuck ourselves, unfortunately, because so much of what was conditioned in our brain is just not accurate, not right, and not what's going to make you happy ultimately. So the tools in the group is integration workbook. So you'll get a workbook. That was yesterday, pattern interrupt bracelet. So pattern interrupt is a big thing we talk about. I think one of the misconceptions about hypnosis is like, oh, I'm just going to be hypnotized and I'm never going to have anything bad the rest of my life. Um, I wouldn't go with that. I wouldn't tell you that as a hypnotist. We're human and we're messy as human. We're complex as humans. And look, hypnosis is ultimately solving the issues that you're having right now. and also from the past. But you resolve those issues and then something else happens in your life, like sometimes depending on what that thing is, it can throw you off. And so again, that's why I'm so big on integration coaching and sort of empowering you to have your own tools and your own way of figuring things out and to do things so that you don't need to rely on somebody. Like when I hear that people have been with therapists for 5, 10, 15 years, that is not on the person who is going to the therapist. They're working with poor therapists. Like if that therapist is making you codependent, my goal is to make you independent because that's the only thing that's going to help you long term. You're going to get access to libraries of hypnosis replays that you can have and so on and so forth. Um, with my private clients, you get the integration notebook, you get all of that stuff, but you also get positive programming pad. There's a very specific technique that's involved with that I give that is extremely helpful to help you sort of pattern interrupt very quickly. There's a lot of pattern interrupt tools that I work with. It's a very important part of this whole thing. We have to be able to stop and interrupt our pattern, or else our nervous system is going to just keep it going, you know? And I'm all about reinforcing this stuff, right? Through inductions, through our hypnosis, through the tools that you get, but also through other things that you can do that are just going to help so that you have it, you have the ability to stop yourself from downward spirals. Um, so the pricing is there below, so you can see what that looks like. Obviously group is a different price point than in one-on-one. The difference being is you're going to get one-on-one attention in the group environment, whereas one-on-one, you get my full attention, full access to me, and it's all about what you got going on versus the theme of the group. So that's that. Is there any questions I can answer? The next step would be for us to, if this is something that you are, oh, there we go. There's some questions there, Lorraine. I'll be that in 1 second. So the next steps is for you to, for us to hop on a call and kind of talk through kind of where you're at, and I can make a recommendation if you need it, and go from there. In terms of how many sessions does it take, one a week or one a day? So that's where it's kind of better to talk on the phone to kind of talk through this because it depends on what you got going on, and what you had going on, and what your goals are consciously. um yes, my pleasure. Do Lorraine, if I don't, can you send me your email through the chat there so we can touch base? I think a follow-up call would be better to answer your questions about how many sessions it takes, because it's really hard to say that depending on the person. Like I said, I've helped people in one session and I help people over extended sessions. It just depends on what you have going on, and I can make recommendations for that. Um, but generally it's more than one session, and again, it's not because that one session is not going to make you feel really good and lighter and open minded and more capable. All of that will happen, but I'm not really here to do a session with you and give you this false sense of like, hey, I'm good, and then we didn't fully heal, and we didn't fully integrate, and then you get sidetracked. I don't want that to happen. So it just depends on a lot of factors there. But yeah, the best it would be for us to hop on a call to talk about it. Yeah, totally hear you there. It is an investment without a question. And that's the beautiful thing about group coaching and group hypnosis is that, you're paying a fraction of the cost. And I'm honest with everybody I talk to about this stuff, which is you can get what you need from the group. I wouldn't offer it if you couldn't. Not like sometimes it might take a little longer depending on the person if there's like a lot of trauma. And sometimes if you're working in a group, but like a one-off session here and there could really accelerate things. But um, what I would say is this: if you are somebody who has struggled with an issue over an extended period of time and it's affecting your overall being, it's affecting you day to day, the cost really is nothing compared to the difference that you're going to experience, especially if you've tried a lot of things in the past. And I get we all have financial stuff, I get it. but there's really not a price tag on lasting change and how you feel about yourself. You get one walk through this life. And if what you have going on is affecting you in a negative way day to day, and it hasn't gotten better and you've tried other things, then, you know, so we'll touch base. If you think of any questions in the meantime, please let us know. Thank you for being here. I know we had a rough start. I feel bad for anybody who did not have the code. Um, I I guess that's why we have the recording. So, um, sounds good. You have a good weekend as well, and happy holiday to you. Thank you so much. Have a good night.